So we had a commercial photo shoot for a cycling company to show off their new bike. So we hit the trails with our Magbox and our Godox lighting gear and try to make some magic. What's up, photography world? Josh Rogasso here from theshutterschool.com, and today I'm going to go over some behind the scenes on a commercial shoot I did for a cycling company that was launching a new product. I'm going to go over 4 different setups, and plus a few extra bonus photos at the end that were all kind of natural light lifestyle. So a little background on the shoot: we were on a bike trail. Unfortunately, we did not have flexibility with the date, so we ended up having to shoot on a bad weather day. So instead of having dramatic, beautiful blue skies and rich green leaves, we had a winter day in Georgia with lots of gray, rainy, wet, and so we really had to get creative to try to make some magic happen. So I'm going to go over some of my setups and some of the troubleshooting here to try to get dynamic images, give you the before and after for each shot, and then a couple of lifestyle at the end. So the goal of the shoot was to accentuate the speed of the bike, just to try to show the bike in action as a serious bike, but then also as a few kind of casual lifestyle-y images, focusing on the rider enjoying the bicycle to kind of help develop the brand. All right, so for the first behind the scenes, actually the first we were doing a portrait of the rider with the bike against this wall, just to kind of get warmed up and get everything going. I like the texture of the background. I like some of the portraits we did of him later, so we ended up just using this spot as a kind of a grungy texture to show off the bike. So that was the first real simple product shot, and then I kind of just wanted to show you the grungy concrete texture that drew us to this, since the background, the greenery wasn't so great. So the next behind the scenes, basically we have this tunnel. Next, as you can see from this shot, this is the railroad tunnel, essentially. The train tracks going above the bike trail, and so inside that tunnel is where we did the next setup, and this is kind of one of the main hero shots for the shoot, and so gets us away from the rain, gets us away from the dreary weather. Can we do something that still kind of looks like the rider is somewhere cool? And so what drew me to this tunnel is that same grungy texture that we used for this bike. Okay, so it's got this cool grungy texture, but we've got this dash of natural light. So because it's a rainy day, there's not a lot of bright sunny weather. We're not getting great super bright sunny daylight. However, under this covering, when you get to the edge of it, you still get some decent amount of natural light. While you get in the tunnel, it's dark, so you can kind of get a little bit of contrast and drama in here. So what I was envisioning was the rider would come across this slash of light, and he would start to be lit up by this slash of natural light, while maybe the rear half of the bike or part of his body would still be kind of in this darker area, and so we'd get a little bit of contrast. And then I have a light out front, kind of shining into the scene, and then we have the rider ride down. I'm low, looking at the flip out screen, pointed down, and have him riding through, and I'm trying to catch him right in that sweet spot where there's that angle of light. And I have a Godox 8600, the large monopack with a big umbrella flashing in, and so you notice that I'm using this natural light to light his face. However, I'm trying to mimic that light with the big monoblock to kind of accentuate the natural light that's already there. So like I said, it's not a super bright sunny day, so sometimes you use what we call like helper light, where you have the natural light but you mimic it. So I'm making sure that his face is nice and filled with that soft umbrella light. And so here's the first shot. As you can see, this is kind of like the natural light bright spot, and then as we get into the shadow, it's slightly darker, and then also the tone is a little bit different. And so then this is as he's riding through, trying to show a little bit of a dynamicness, tilting it so that he's like riding up the hill. And then here's another shot where, as you can see, he's entering the brighter part of the frame, leaving the darker part of the frame, just to add a little bit of contrast. And what the composition here of cutting off the face, I did to help accentuate the bike. So with this shot, you kind of get drawn to the rider's face. Whenever you have a face in a shot, people look at the face. So if you have a product or a clothing type shot, sometimes you want to avoid the face if you really want people looking at the product. And so here we go. Here's kind of the final two, one with his face, one without. This one, I took the natural tones of the green. This one, I brushed in a little bit of a blue color, I believe, to give me a little bit of contrast of warm and cool. Try to make it a little bit more dynamic and interesting. All right, for the next shot, pretty basic. Here's the setup. I have one umbrella off to the left where the rider, I'm instructing the rider about where the money target space is going to be, and I'm having a little bit of a helper light. Again, this is a soft, even, natural light shot, but I want him to stand out from the background a little bit. I'm on top of the railroad tracks, and I'm trying to I'm going to end up standing up tall so I can try to shoot through some of these branches here. We're not in some grand wilderness, but I want it to look like we're somewhere that has a little bit of a scenery, a little bit of a space. And so I just have the rider coming through the railroad tunnel, riding down the road, and then riding back. And just that little pop of light kind of fills in his face, just enough to make him stand out. As you can see, this dreary weather, we don't have a lot to work with as far as pop into the background. So by allowing the scenery to be a little bit darker, we get a little bit of saturation and richness in the background, but then we have a little bit of a soft pop on him to bring him out. All right, so the next setup, as you can see with this behind the scenes shot, the scenery, not a lot of green, not a lot of color to work with. So we want to do something more interesting for the background. And we want to show the speed and the dynamicness of the bike rider going fast. And so I guess I'll show you that after really quick. So here's what we end up with. The rider looks like he's flying through the woods, and with some motion blur to blur out the ugly background and accentuate the speed. And so to set up the shot, we actually end up with two lights. So I have one Magbox with some basic flash speed lights, one 80-200, one regular speed light. And this is like as a backlight to separate him from the background. Because it is a busy, messy background, I wanted some help separating him. And then we have one umbrella with the 8600 large block to actually provide the main light source. So this is during the daytime, luckily not a super bright sunny day to do this effect. So the fact that it is bright outside, we're going to need a lot of light to freeze the subject. And so having the 8600 and then two flashes in this Magbox gives us a chance at freezing this motion. And so here's the setup in action. As you can see, I'm waiting for the rider to come in. I've kind of pre-focused because you're moving. And so if you don't know how this technique works, you have a really slow shutter speed of like 1/5 of a second. And then so as you move the camera, the background gets blurry. And then you need the rider to not be blurry. So you need to flash him really bright so that he will freeze. There's still going to be some motion blur on the subject, but the goal is to get him as sharp as possible while the background is blurry as possible. So since I pre-focus, I can just track him, and the faster you move the camera, the more blur. So I kind of had to do it like several times to get that nice sweet spot in, that nice flow, make sure I wasn't going too slow or too fast, and get the lights timed up. And then here's another angle of it. As you can see, I'm whipping with the 16-35 on at 35, and got the lights firing, and then we get the final shot. So as you can see, that backlight is really helping get that separation. And then the front light is getting that fill. If he didn't have this backlight, you see how his nose can stand out from that rim light almost, and his helmet can stand out. Otherwise, he would kind of, as you can see on his back, it kind of blends into the background. So anytime you have a busy background and you want your subject to stand out, you really want that backlight, rim light kind of situation. So I have two lights to really allow him to freeze. And as you can see where the light is hitting him most, the front, we're getting more sharpness. And it's a little bit of motion blur in the bike because it's hard at daylight to get it perfectly sharp, but it's sharp enough relative to the background. But as you can see, the back of the bike is much more blurry because it's not getting that light to freeze it. It's getting longer motion blur. And I actually had to move relatively slow because it is daylight. He's going to get motion blur because it's hard to get it completely black exposure. All right, for the next shot, simple. We're trying to come up with anything artistic and scenic and visually interesting that we can, even though we're on just a simple bike trail on a crappy day. So taking advantage of the rain, taking advantage of the water. This small puddle here creates a cool reflection. We got this cool background with the grungy texture. Concrete photographs really well. So whenever you see like a concrete wall or a concrete textured building, ground, whatever, that texture just for some reason I think really pops when you photograph it. So I get down really low, camera on the ground. I actually had to take my spider mount off to get it on the ground completely so that their bikes would be showing in the reflection. And from this angle, you can kind of see the setup. And there's the shot. Super simple. Because they're against this wall here, I was able to just kind of use the natural light I wanted it to be super soft and even, nothing too crazy. And I wanted the reflection in the water to add some type of visual element. Again, like I said, we wanted a little bit, we want to know that the riders are there. This is a lifestyle kind of showing off that riders use these bikes, but we wanted you to focus on the bike. So we have the two different versions of the women's bike and the men's bike, and using that reflection and the warm, rich texture behind them as the visual element. The warmness going against the blue of the bike. So you got orange and blue. Orange and blue always go good together. So there's that shot. Pretty simple. So really the only two complicated big setups with the big light was the motion blur and the tunnel shot. Those are the main setups that I did, and then the rest were just a little bit of lifestyle-y kind of detail shots of the bike, nothing too crazy. Here we just have the big umbrella on the rider's face so that she can come out from the background, and then I actually had to brush in and do a little bit of a sky replacement to get one nice shot with the sky. It really was not a nice day. There's not a lot of green, not a lot of color, so I had to do something there to get just a basic lifestyle shot. And then here's an example of a more relaxed kind of lifestyle pose where you're showing off the person, the rider. This could work for a simple ad or a simple website image where the rider's carrying the bike. But then when you really want to focus on the brand of the bike, you crop in, and then you have enough of a face to show that it's a person, but you're not distracted by his eyes because we're drawn to eyes, and just showing off the pulse of the brand. So if you like this video and you want to see more behind the scenes and more in-depth tutorials. So right now I've been making a lot of behind the scenes videos on shoots that I've done, like working with clients. I just have some before and after footage, but I'm going to start developing some actual tutorials where I set up some shoots so I can really give you a higher quality of a video where you watch me in action. So if you want to be here for those, please like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate all the love of helping the channel grow. So again, I'm Joshua Grasso. Thanks so much for watching Charter School. We'll see you in the next video.